knows how long he was driving. I saw him pull out of the parking lot and turn right, and the box was still stuck under his car. So who knows how long he was driving with that box under his car. I bet he got home, he pulled into his driveway.
Cloud in the sky. I'm not.
Wow.
You're like music. It's not.
I don't think it's real.
Oh,
I don't think it's
maybe
real.
there's a
I see the lineup for car. It's getting wasted. The Empire State Building is really close to it, so it's a good.
And I do this with what was in my hands.
You laugh, but we become what we behold, and we shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. Great quote from Marshall McLuhan. I think it's kind of required on any design-related talk these days. Maybe we can reframe it a little bit. We shape our products, and thereafter our products shape us. If you wonder what I mean by that, there's an interesting trajectory here. Mildly sobering, found a quote that said, "Looking down at your device is like having a 60-pound weight around your neck," according to Dr. Kenneth Hansaraj, a New York spinal surgeon. 60-pound weight around your head. I don't know about you guys. I have a couple of kids at home. Throwing them on my shoulders does not last very long before I am in pain and quickly dismounting them. There is an amazing article that was published recently, and I am going to read it to you, because I couldn't say it better myself. David Pell wrote an article called "You Should Be Afraid." It says, "We are deeply concerned about the fact that we don't know what this technology is doing to us, and our feverish mass adoption of the era's tech and advances is moving too quickly for us to have the time, in the moment, or in terms of historical data, to answer our very legitimate questions. The other day, I was grabbing a burrito near South Park. When I looked around the restaurant, everyone from lunching hipsters to coding nerds to Luddite-looking bookworms to a woman taking a break behind the burrito counter was looking down at a phone, including the guy reading to you right now. Everyone. The place was silent, and of course, exactly nothing in that scene surprises you. That is life as we know it. But pause for a second and consider how quickly mobile technology has swept across every cohort in our society. It went from nowhere to everywhere in what seems like less time than it takes to miss a Meerkat video. Should give you some context to when this was written. On some level, that worries us. And don't kid yourself, the people it worries the most are the early adopting addicts that work in the internet industry. All of us. We use this stuff and we think about it more than anyone else. We also worry about its potentially negative impacts more than anyone. Most internet professionals spend their careers and public lives touting the positives of technology, both because there are positives and because it's the goose that lays the golden eggs with no revenue and a $17 billion valuation. But privately, I don't know a single person in our industry who doesn't worry about being too distracted around their kids or about spending too much time staring at a screen. We know that we're both early adopters and over adopters, and we wonder if all of this is going too far, too fast. Do cell phones cause cancer? I don't know. I'm a humanities major, so was I. I don't know how a toaster works, but I do know that I'm sitting on my couch with an iPhone in my pocket and a MacBook on my lap, and both utilize technologies I don't fully understand, and both are warm. Both are receiving and sending data over wireless connections, and both of them are within a couple inches of my selfie stick. Should I be at least a little bit concerned? I would think so. But I'm even more concerned by the fact that I probably wouldn't move either device out of reach, even if science confirms my darkest dystopian paranoia. And even if our physical health is in no danger, there's absolutely no doubt that our psychological and social worlds are in a state of chaos. And that is of our doing, but not fully in our control. And that scares us. There's a really interesting example here. The Apple Watch. How many people in the audience today are wearing an Apple Watch? Okay, just a handful. All right, very interesting. I was really curious about what spurred Apple to create this product. And there's been a number of articles that have been written and a number of things that have been talked about, the genesis and where these ideas came from. But really, what it came down to, and this was kind of amazing to me, was this, ladies and gentlemen, is the answer to the overwhelming distraction of the iPhone. Apple built, designed, built, manufactured, marketed, shipped, sold, and basically covered the earth in iPhones in what is honestly a phenomenally short amount of time, which transformed life as we know it, as Dave was alluding to in that article. But more importantly, it had a profound effect on our behavior. It changed the way that we have human relationships. In a lot of ways, it brought us a lot closer. Things like Facebook and Twitter and a lot of these, arguably really truly mobile internet companies came out of the fact that the iPhone was delivered into our hands like a golden black metal tablet. And they all experienced the same thing. We're habitually trained to respond to every nudge and ding and buzz on our phone, as if we are some little Pavlovian rat. The phone is ruining your life. Was the reason they decided to make the watch. As product people, we are responsible. We are responsible for the decisions that we make. We are responsible for the ramifications of those decisions. But it does not get talked about very often, if ever. The behaviors that we are creating and promoting and the things that we put in front of people and incentivize them to use and the long-term consequences rarely ever get brought up in meetings, rarely ever get factored in when product roadmaps are being created. And there certainly isn't time baked in anywhere to stop and reflect. So today, I'd like to talk a little bit about an experience that I had. Oh, yes. Got ahead of myself. Apologize. Brett Victor wrote an article about a week or so ago and reinforcing this notion. The technical properties of a medium shape social practice. And if the resulting social practice is harmful, it's the medium that is at fault. And I mostly agree with Brett on this point. However, I don't think that we can just blame the actual medium itself, because wonderful human hands programmed those protocols. Wonderful human hands designed the interfaces that used those protocols to create new products to put in front of people. And I want to take us on a little bit of a journey. The great part of this talk is the name of the conference, Mind the Product. I really thought long and hard about what minding the product would be, and then I realized that this conference originated in the UK. And I immediately was reminded of Mind the Gap. Pay attention, because if you don't, you could die. mind the gap, mind the product, pay attention, be aware of it. Have an awareness and alertness in everything you do when you are working with these products. So in order to kind of take you guys on this journey, I have to talk about my life over the last 2-3 years. As you may have heard, I was the principal designer at Twitter. It was a phenomenal opportunity to be a part of a really, truly seminal company, right through all of the growth pains, both organizationally and product-wise. And it's amazing to me the number of things that go into something like a real-time messaging service. Twitter, for all intents and purposes, is this amazing asynchronous broadcasting mechanism that is deeply tied to your mobile phone, allows anyone to say anything at any time, make of that what you will. It allows any of us to choose, to pick and choose who we hear from, when we hear from them. But because of the nature of this product, we run into some very interesting behaviors. It is an attention whore. It demands that you pay attention to it. It demands and entices and constantly seduces you to get back and give your attention. Now, if you follow 2 or 3 people, maybe not. You might be able to manage, depends on the 2 or 3 people, to be totally honest with you. But, you know, with use, most people tend to add a few more people and then a few more people, and then pretty soon this real-time stream is a torrent of news and tidbits and fascinating, mundane, bizarre, weird breakfast toast, you know, all these things, riots, earthquakes, revolutions, but all of it constantly streaming forward. And it's almost impossible for you to stay on top of it unless the entirety of your life is devoted to reading Twitter. So this kind of software has built-in interactions that feed these behaviors, feed this addiction. And I'll get to that a little later. I was very fortunate in my role to get to look at a lot of the longer term, where do we take the product? What do we do? What should Twitter grow up to be? And I got the green light to do a secret project. Well, it wasn't secret so much as it was a small project that was scoped to a few of us, and it was an attempt to kind of see if there was a different way that we could do product development at Twitter. And it involved doing a lot of very hands-on user research, interviewing people, listening to how they managed their time, how they managed their attention, how they managed the information that flowed in and out of their day. Amazingly, we barely ever talked about Twitter. We really were interested in all of the other places because our product was just one of many things competing for your attention. I was very, very fortunate. I had a handful of great designers in New York that were working with me on this project. We were cranking away. We had this belief that, it was a belief. I didn't have a ton of data, had a good gut hunch, that if we could actually make it easier for people to come back into Twitter and not feel like they were completely helpless and didn't know where they were, that they might be more inclined to stick around. It was kind of like if you get invited to a party and you walk in and there's a bunch of friends, but they're already in the middle of a conversation. It's not super comfortable to be like, hey guys, what are you talking about? And all eyes turn to you because you just interrupted a great story. We kept hearing from people that was their experience of coming back to Twitter after being gone for a little bit. So we wanted to do something proactive. We wanted to find a solution to the product that allowed you to not have to be in it and on it all the time. And yet still, every time you chose to come back and give it your attention, it was what you needed when you needed it. Sound pretty good? No? Okay. It never shipped, and we'll get to that part of it, but good thing, because apparently it wouldn't have resonated with you guys. So you like having to read all of Twitter. Good to know. I'll pass that on. So a month into this process, I got really, really sick. And it was one of those things where there's no reason. I have no idea why. I had this weird infection that happened, and I ended up in the ER. They had no idea what was going on, gave me antibiotics, sent me home. I sent an email to the team, hey, I'm I'm not doing well. You guys carry on this week. We got plenty to do. Hopefully I'll feel better in a day or so. Progressively got worse. All of my joints swelled, headaches that were bordering on like blackout. Ended up back in the ER 4 days later. And I'm laying on this bed, and I'm thinking to myself, this is not fun. And do you know what I did? I reached for my phone. And I checked Twitter. And there was this very distinct moment where I thought to myself, really? You could be dying, and you pulled out your phone to check Twitter? Now, I could make an argument that I was alone, and that by checking Twitter, it made me feel connected, which there is really some truth to that. But on the other hand, it also was like, dear Lord, I have a problem. The doctor comes in, she tells me, and it was actually the same doctor I had seen 4 days before. She says, well, I'm going to figure out what's going on, and I guarantee I'm going to make sure you don't die on my watch. Bedside manner. The important part, though, was that for the next, 8 hours, as they proceeded to poke and prod and test and find out that I had pneumonia, do a spinal tap, all kinds of stuff, I realized, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And I know it's kind of a little bit cliche. It's one of those it wasn't near death, really. But in the moment, it sure was a very sobering event to make me really look at what am I doing. And it made me think about what I was doing and the project that I was working on. And it made me really reflect on what my purpose was as a designer, as a product person, as someone that lives in this day and age, in this particular city, and has the privilege of working in this industry. What am I doing? What am I doing with my passion? What am I doing with my connections? What am I doing with my gifts? Fantastic quote. What we make completely testifies to who we are. And I laid on the bed in that ER room feeling like I was not testifying to who I really was with what I was making. I healed up. Fortunately, the next day I went and saw another doctor who said, oh, you have a sulfa allergy. Please give me the names of those morons that have been treating you. Took me off the medication. I was in 3 days, I was back to normal. I went back into work the following Monday, went smack dab into the most glorious amount of red tape in politics and land grabbing that I have seen in my career. Another part of the organization, someone who was arguably maybe same level, maybe one rung up from me, knew one of the board members, had convinced them that his project that they were working on was the most important thing that could possibly be done at Twitter, and he guaranteed that they would have a working prototype by the next board meeting, which meant that the meeting I was walking into to ask for engineering resources and to show them the working prototype that we had was a complete bust. At that moment, I realized something. We were misaligned. Me as a product person and my beliefs about what the product even should be weren't quite lining up. The next day, I was in another meeting where a few folks walked in and said, we have some amazing data. You're never going to believe what we discovered. We discovered that people are pulling to refresh 6 times, even if they get nothing. And you should have seen the looks on the people's faces in the room. It was just like, and one after another, oh my God, we could serve them new content from here. We could send them this. We could do that. We could put ads in there. We could do this. And I was the only person in the room that said, actually, how about we tell them to put the fucking phone down and go outside? That, unfortunately, and I didn't really vocalize too terribly much more about my disdain for that thinking, but it was interesting. When I first started at Twitter, the word addictive was kind of banned. By the time I left, most people were talking about how do we make this product more addictive. So I obviously, there were some misalignments there. I left Twitter partly because the best way to complain is to make things. And I had a deep conviction that that there was a company, a space, an environment where people who actually cared about the results of their decisions and wanted to pay attention to the behaviors that they were shaping and creating could come together and work quickly, iteratively, building new products. It took me almost 2 years to make that a reality. As it was introduced, I'm super fortunate to say that Habitat is the company that I started, and we're cranking away. But it was really interesting because it didn't go according to plan. And actually, the first version of it didn't work after about 4 months. I had to close it down. I got super depressed. I actually thought about leaving tech entirely because I kept looking around and just being a little unsettled with the types of things that were being built. And there was a kind of overarching pattern that I kept seeing. And it was the advice that I was hearing both to me and to a lot of my friends that you really need to just build gimmicks. Build that next little thing, the next pull to refresh, the next swipe left, the next disappearing photo, whatever it is. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you get millions of users and how you end up becoming a billion-dollar company. And this is the mantra that's being repeated over and over and over. And you sit in enough coffee shops and you hear enough people talk about it. And I have enough friends, God bless them, that are sitting there building one thing. Oh, well, that didn't catch. Let's try it at the other college, see if these other college kids will use it. And I'm just, at a point, I became restless, a little disillusioned. And I think that was a good thing. Because what we don't want to do as product people is continue to reinforce that. What we want to do, I hope and I pray that by the time I'm done, you will agree with me. What we want to do is we want to incentivize empathy. We want to incentivize reflection. We want to think hard about the decisions we're making with the products we're building. And I know not everyone is building consumer, mobile, lomo, products out there. And a lot of people are actually working at companies that are solving legitimate business problems, legitimate health problems. But even in those sectors, every decision we make around these products has an effect. And specifically, the behaviors that we're using in our products, in the UI and in the experience, those things that drive your engagement numbers, those things potentially have a disastrous effect on us as human beings in the long run. This is, I think, a pretty decent example of what we don't want to see happening.
My name is Saeed Jabrani. I am the CEO of Ametabug, and we're here to revolutionize the way you report bugs on your mobile platform.
Happen will revolutionize location-based mobile news aggregation as you know it.
We're making the world a better place through Paxos algorithms for consensus protocols.
And we're making the world a better place through software-defined data centers for cloud computing.
A better place through canonical data models to communicate between endpoints.
A better place through scalable, fault-tolerant distributed databases with ACID transactions.
And we are truly local mobile social.
And we're completely so-mo-low.
And we're molo-so.
We're low-mo-so, bro.
We were so-low-mo, but now we're mo-low-so. No, mo-so-low.
That's a clip from Silicon Valley if you haven't seen it. I actually enjoy the show, probably because it's way too close to the truth. And most of the people that complain about it don't like it because it's so close to the truth. There's always a lot of truth in that kind of humor. And it's funny because I almost think that tech has become the new rock and roll. It used to be when you were a teenager, you wanted to, learn how to play the guitar and move to Hollywood and start a band and hopefully become a rock star. Okay, wait, that was just me. But no, I mean, admittedly, there's a huge chunk of the youth that's the route that you take. And today it's like we're seeing just tens of thousands of people streaming into this city every week. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned that they're going into companies that are dysfunctional would be a kind word. And that are so hyper-focused on this growth and making sure that we hit the numbers so that so we can raise more money, and there's just a very big cycle there. Now, I've been here long enough and I've been in this long enough to know that that's part of how this game is played. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to contribute to that. I want to understand it, take advantage of it, and make sure that when we're building products, that we're building products that we can be proud of, that we're building products that solve a problem for people. And the last little theme I want to kind of zero in on before we wrap up here is a little quote from Massimo Vignelli. It says, "The life of a designer, product person, engineer, anyone who crafts things, is a life of fighting against ugliness. And for the longest time, I thought this was about beauty and aesthetics, which meant that it's subjective, which meant that you can't use this as an argument in a meeting. Well, we're fighting against ugliness. Ugliness doesn't really work necessarily. Have you seen Craigslist? Their numbers are just fine. But I came to realize over the last little period that it's not about beauty and aesthetics only. And Massimo absolutely believed in the beauty of design, but it's about ugliness of process. It's about ugliness of friction and of confusion, of poor decisions, lack of communication, made in service, not made in service of the people using your product, but usually made in service of something that's a result of miscommunication within your organization. And our fight is a fight against ugliness. It's a fight against the ugliness of behaviors that we don't understand and we can't control, that are happening without us and to us at the same time. There's too much excess. There's not enough care and craft. And a number of people that I deeply respect, Johnny Ive, Dieter Rams, Massimo Vignelli, as you said, there's this theme that I kept picking up on, and it's been echoed by others, that we don't need more right now. And I'd argue living in San Francisco and in America, we have more than just about anywhere else. We need less, but better. To steal a little quote from Dieter Rams, we need things that have care and consideration in them. Apple products are an interesting example because at the end of the day, there's no doubt at the amount of care and attention that went into the products. You can feel it literally when you hold it in your hand. Granted, the OS still has some issues, but hey, I think they're working on it. I hear OS 9 is going to be real stable. So, but it's a purpose, right? There's an intention behind what we do. And in that process is this desire to make sure that what we're putting into people's lives, the things that we are asking them to accept into their lives, into their homes, into their attention, are things that have care, that have consideration, that are, even if we don't understand the effects of it, we're at least taking a pause to consider that there might be something there that we don't know and we don't understand. This is a great quote. To make it more usable and more functional is critical, right? But it's not spectacular. The media has to learn that the unspectacular things are the important things. And I love this quote because this is coming from someone who has built product after product that was loved and used for decades. And what he's telling us is, guys, don't worry about the spectacular, flashy, shiny stuff. It's the little things. It's the care. It's the details. This comes down again to purpose. Why do you do what you do? I can't answer that for you. I could hazard a whole bunch of guesses, and I'd probably be wrong at most of them. But I want you to think about that today. And as you leave the conference, I want you to go thinking about, why am I doing what I do? Why do I feel compelled to build products, to create, to make things? Buckminster Fuller. We were called to be architects of the future, not its victims. This is my hallmark for you guys. This is what I want to send us off from this conference, remembering that we were called to be the architects of the future. And everyone sitting here has answered that call in one way or another. You're here because you believe in building and creating and shaping the future that we live in and the next generation will live in. But we are not to be its victims. And if that's going to be the case, we, the people who are responsible for building and creating these products, have to take the time and make sure that we're operating with intention. Thank you very much.